All right, so today we're going to be looking into the life of J. Craig Venter.
Oh, yeah, Venter.
You know how, like, everyone's DNA is unique?
Right.
Just imagine finding out that a lot of the first human genome that was sequenced actually came from the scientist who sequenced it.
Yeah, that was a Venter, wasn't it? That's certainly a move that kind of shows how audacious he was.
Yeah, he's been called a genius, a maverick, even a villain by some.
He's a controversial figure for sure, but
But one thing is certain is that he never shied away from making a big statement.
right.
And that's what makes his story so fascinating.
Yeah, it really is.
So we've got articles, research papers, even some of his own writings.
Wow.
And we're going to use all this to go on a wild ride through, groundbreaking discoveries, scientific rivalries, and some ethical quandaries that might just make you think twice about the future.
Yeah, I think Venter's career is really a great example of the kinds of dilemmas we face with scientific advancements, like how far is too far,
Yeah.
and what are the consequences of our discoveries.
Right.
And Venter's story, I think, forces us to confront these questions directly.
So let's start at the beginning.
Okay.
Venter, he didn't just immediately become this superstar scientist.
Right.
He wasn't a child prodigy.
He wasn't like immediately at the top of his class or anything.
Right. He actually struggled in school.
It's interesting, because that contrasts so strongly with the kind of driven, ambitious figure that we know today.
Right.
But even back then, there were signs of that spirit, like when he discovered competitive swimming.
Right.
And through just pure determination, he went from being a constant loser to a consistent winner.
Yeah, he basically willed himself to succeed.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if that's what gave him the tenacity for science later on.
Yeah, it's possible, right? Like that drive to win and to push himself beyond his limits seems to be something that he did over and over again in his life.
Yeah, and speaking of pushing limits, we can't ignore the effect that his time in Vietnam had on him.
Oh, yeah. Vietnam had a huge impact on him.
Imagine, being a 20-year-old medic in the middle of a war.
Right, and having to make life or death decisions on a daily basis.
Yeah, the articles I read said that experience, almost pushed him over the edge.
Right, he even tried to commit suicide.
He actually swam out to sea with the intention of never coming back.
And the only thing that stopped him was an encounter with a shark.
Wow.
It's a crazy story.
Like something out of a movie.
Right. Talk about a close call.
It really makes you think that maybe, coming that close to death ignited an even stronger will to live in him.
It's possible, right? Like he was reborn, but with this new sense of purpose.
And that purpose led him to genomics.
Eventually, yeah.
Fast forward to the late 90s, and the race to sequence the entire human genome was on.
Right.
We had the Human Genome Project,
which was this huge government-funded effort.
moving along steadily but slowly.
And then you have Venter.
Venter comes in.
Never one for patience.
He decides to just shake things up.
He always wanted to disrupt the status quo.
He saw an opportunity to do that.
Instead of just waiting for the government project to finish, he started his own company.
Called Celera Genomics.
With the goal of beating the government to the finish line.
What an audacious goal.
It was a huge challenge to the establishment.
And what really set Celera apart was this technique.
Called shotgun sequencing.
And it was controversial back then.
It was a high-risk, high-reward kind of thing.
Imagine taking apart a really complicated machine,
smashing it into a million pieces,
and then trying to put it back together again.
That's essentially what shotgun sequencing did.
It sounds so chaotic.
Yeah, but that's Venter for you.
And surprisingly enough, it worked.
It really did.
In 2001, Celera published the first complete human genome sequence.
Years ahead of the government project.
It's a truly monumental achievement.
It really is, and it sent shockwaves through the scientific community.
Some people were calling him a visionary.
A genius who accelerated the pace of discovery.
But of course, other people were criticizing him.
They said that he was too focused on profit and that it was wrong to privatize something as fundamental as the human genome.
And to make things even more controversial, a lot of the DNA that they used for the sequencing actually came from Venter himself.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Some people accused him of having an ego the size of the genome he sequenced.
It definitely made people question what his motivations were.
Was he just trying to be practical and speed up the process, or was it something else?
Or was it a sign of his ambition? Did he want to be at the center of this revolution in science?
Regardless of his motivations, Venter made history.
He really did.
But as we all know, in science, triumph and controversy, they often go hand in hand.
That's very true.
And for Venter, the controversy was just getting started.
The dot-com bubble burst, funding dried up, and he was kicked out of his own company.
Yeah.
He went from superstar scientist to corporate casualty just like that.
That's a dramatic fall from grace.
It is.
You'd think that something like that would slow him down.
But not Venter.
But this is where his story gets even more interesting.
It really does. It's a testament to his resilience.
He could have just disappeared after something like that.
Right.
But instead, he just started a new institute
The J. Craig Venter Institute.
and set even more ambitious goals for himself.
It seems like he almost enjoys proving people wrong.
He definitely has a drive to defy expectations.
And his next project was probably his most audacious yet.
What was that?
A global expedition aboard his yacht.
His yacht.
Yeah, the Sorcerer II.
Wow.
He wanted to collect and analyze microbial samples from the oceans.
Sounds like something straight out of a Jules Verne novel.
Doesn't it? This modern-day explorer mapping the depths of the microbial world.
It sounds incredible.
He was trying to discover all this hidden life on Earth, all the microorganisms that make up our ecosystems.
But I bet even out in the vastness of the ocean, controversy wasn't far behind.
You're right about that. Some critics accused him of bioprospecting.
Basically saying that he was trying to profit from the genetic resources that he was discovering.
It's a really complex issue.
Yeah, it raises a lot of questions about who owns natural resources and how they can be exploited.
And how we can balance scientific advancement with protecting biodiversity.
Those are tough questions.
Yeah.
And ones that are still being debated today.
That's right.
But Venter seemed completely unfazed by any of the criticism.
He always has a vision, a goal that he is just determined to achieve.
And that leads us to what might be his most mind-boggling achievement of all.
What's that?
Creating artificial life in a lab.
It sounds like science fiction.
It really does.
Like he's playing God.
Venter and his team actually synthesized a bacterial genome from scratch and implanted it into a cell, bringing it to life.
People used to think that something like that was impossible.
It really blurs the lines between what's natural and what's artificial.
It was a major turning point in science.
And of course, it opened up this Pandora's box of ethical concerns and potential applications.
So many possibilities and so many dangers.
Imagine, custom-designed organisms
That could clean up pollution.
or produce biofuels.
Or even make personalized medicine.
The possibilities seem limitless.
They really do.
But then there's that fear of the unknown.
What if they mutate out of control?
Or escape into the environment and destroy ecosystems?
Those are valid concerns.
It really is like opening Pandora's box.
It is. You have this amazing potential for good.
But at the same time, you risk unleashing something dangerous.
Something that we can't control.
It shows us how important it is to have balance as we explore these new areas of science.
I have to be careful and think about the consequences of our actions.
It's a good reminder that scientific progress isn't just about science.
It's also about ethics and society.
And that brings us to Venter's current work with Human Longevity, Inc.,
Right.
which is trying to fight aging.
He always chooses really big goals.
Yeah, extending the human lifespan is about as big as it gets.
It really is. So how's he trying to do it this time?
Well, he's using big data genomics and AI.
To try and crack the code of aging.
That's right. Human Longevity actually offers this really in-depth medical exam.
It goes way beyond what you'd normally get at a doctor's office.
Yeah, it's that $25,000 exam that we mentioned before.
That's the one.
The one that combines whole genome sequencing, advanced imaging, and an analysis of your microbiome.
You're basically getting this high-resolution picture of your entire biological system.
From your genes to the trillions of bacteria in your gut.
It's pretty amazing.
But what do they actually do with all that data?
That's where the real magic happens. They use these algorithms and machine learning to go through all that information.
Wow.
Looking for patterns and correlations that might indicate a risk for health problems in the future.
So it's like a crystal ball that can predict your health.
It's not really about predicting the future, but about seeing what risks you might have and what you can do to stop them from happening.
So you can make changes to your lifestyle now to avoid problems later.
Exactly.
It's like preventative medicine, but on a whole other level.
Yeah.
But I bet an approach like that comes with its own set of ethical considerations.
You're right. Some critics argue that this type of testing could lead to overdiagnosis and unnecessary medical procedures.
So instead of making people healthier, it might just make them more anxious.
Right. It's like that saying, ignorance is bliss.
Sometimes not knowing might be better for your mental health.
That's true.
And then there's the issue of cost and accessibility.
Right. This type of advanced testing is really expensive.
So only a few people can afford it.
It could make healthcare inequality even worse.
Yeah, because the wealthy would have access to this cutting-edge care while others wouldn't.
That's a really important point. We need to make sure that these new technologies benefit everyone, not just a select few.
So once again, Venter's pushing the boundaries, but this time it's in healthcare and longevity.
And like we've seen throughout his career, whenever there's a lot of innovation, there's also a lot of responsibility.
Right, we need to think carefully about the ethical and societal implications of these new technologies.
Especially before they're available to everyone.
We've covered a lot of ground here.
We
From Venter's unusual beginnings to his groundbreaking work on the human genome.
To his exploration of the microbial world and his creation of artificial life.
It's a story that's both inspiring and a little bit unsettling.
It really is full of triumph and controversy.
And a constant desire to push the limits of what's possible.
And it's not over yet. Venter's still going strong.
That's right. Even in his 70s, he's still pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
This time he's taking on aging itself.
And we still have a lot more to learn about this mysterious figure.
The legacy he's building.
Stay with us as we continue our deep dive into the world of J. Craig Venter.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of J. Craig Venter.
So before we move on, I want to go back to Venter creating artificial life for a second.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's something that really captures the imagination.
Yeah, it does.
It makes you rethink what life really is.
Right. It's not every day that you hear scientists say that they've created a new life form.
It's like something out of a movie.
Right. So what were people's first reactions when they heard about this?
Yeah, what did people think?
Well, it was a mixture of awe and fear, I think. Some people saw it as this huge step forward for science,
Right.
a testament to human ingenuity and how science can help us unlock the secrets of nature.
Right.
They thought about a future where we could design organisms to solve all sorts of problems.
Like clean up pollution or cure diseases?
Exactly. It was like the ultimate form of bioengineering.
But I'm sure some people were also worried, right?
Oh, of course.
People who were afraid of the risks.
What if we couldn't control these new organisms?
What if they mutated or escaped into the environment?
What if they destroyed ecosystems?
Right? All valid concerns.
Definitely, and the ethical implications are still being debated today.
It really is like opening Pandora's box.
Yeah, you have all this potential for good, but you also risk unleashing something really dangerous.
Something that we can't control.
Exactly, and it just shows how we need to be really careful as we explore these new scientific frontiers.
Right? We need to think about the consequences.
Always.
It reminds us that scientific progress doesn't exist in a vacuum.
Right, it's always connected to ethics and society as a whole.
And that brings us to Venter's current work with Human Longevity, Inc.
Which is focused on fighting aging.
Right? Venter seems to love these huge, ambitious goals.
He really does, and extending the human lifespan is definitely a big one.
It's as big as it gets. So what's his approach this time?
He's betting on the power of big data genomics and artificial intelligence.
To try and crack the code of aging.
Exactly.
So Human Longevity offers this really comprehensive medical exam.
It goes way beyond anything you've probably ever experienced.
It's that $25,000 exam that we talked about, right?
Yep, that's the one.
The one with the whole genome sequencing, the advanced imaging, and the microbiome
You're basically getting a high-resolution snapshot of your entire body.
From your genes to all the bacteria living in your gut.
It's pretty amazing.
So what do they actually do with all that data?
Well, they use these powerful algorithms and machine learning to sift through it all.
Wow.
Looking for patterns and connections that might indicate health risks down the road.
So it's like a crystal ball for your health.
Not exactly. It's more about identifying risks and intervening early.
So you can make changes now to prevent problems later.
Right. It's like preventative medicine, but taken to a whole new level.
I imagine there are some ethical concerns with this kind of approach, though.
Of course, some critics say that this type of testing could lead to overdiagnosis and unnecessary treatments.
Which could end up making people more anxious than healthier.
Right. Sometimes not knowing is better for your peace of mind.
Plus, there's the issue of cost.
This kind of testing is really expensive.
So only a small percentage of people can actually afford it.
Exactly, and that could make healthcare inequality even worse.
Yeah, because the wealthy would have access to this cutting-edge technology.
Well, everyone else is left behind.
That's a really important point. We have to make sure that these new technologies benefit everyone, not just the privileged few.
Absolutely.
So once again, Venter's pushing the boundaries this time in the field of healthcare.
And like we've seen throughout his career, great innovation also comes with great responsibility.
Right. We need to think carefully about what all of this means for society.
Especially before these technologies become widely available.
We've covered a lot of ground here today.
We really have.
From Venter's unconventional beginnings to his groundbreaking work on the human genome.
To his exploration of microbial life, his creation of artificial life, and now his quest to extend the human lifespan.
It's a story that's both inspiring and a little unsettling.
It really is full of triumphs, controversies, and a relentless pursuit of pushing the limits of what's possible.
And it's a story that's still being written. We're back for the final part of our deep dive into the world of J. Craig Venter.
It's been quite a journey.
Yeah, it really has. I mean, from sequencing the human genome to creating artificial life.
This is a scientist who's not afraid of anything.
He really isn't. He's always pushing the boundaries.
So as we've been talking about all these amazing achievements and the controversies that have come with them,
Right.
What do you think has stood out the most to you about Venter's approach to science?
You know, I think it's his unwavering belief in the power of technology. He sees a problem and immediately thinks about how to engineer a solution.
Interesting.
Whether it's sequencing DNA faster or fighting aging, He always seems to believe that technology holds the key.
That's a really good point.
And it's not just optimism, it's also a desire to use those discoveries to make a real difference in the world.
He doesn't want to just understand things.
Right, he wants to use that knowledge to change things.
To make a real impact.
I wonder if that's part of what drives him to push those ethical boundaries that we've been talking about. Like, maybe that desire to make a big impact sometimes makes him overlook the risks.
That's a good question.
It's a tough one.
It is.
His career's been all about this tension between progress and ethics.
It really has.
He's not afraid to challenge the rules, and that can lead to both amazing breakthroughs and some pretty controversial outcomes.
Right.
So where does that lead us? We've seen how incredible his work is.
But we've also talked about all the worries that it raises.
What do you think the average person should take away from all of this?
I think there are a few key lessons we can learn from Venter's story.
Okay.
First, he shows us the importance of being bold. He wasn't afraid to dream big, to go after things that seemed impossible.
He took the road less traveled.
Exactly, and that kind of fearlessness is crucial for science.
We need people who aren't afraid to push the limits of what we think is possible.
Absolutely.
And he also wasn't afraid to fail.
And that's a really important part of success.
It is. He took risks, he learned from his setbacks, and he kept going.
That leads us to the second lesson, perseverance. Venter faced so many obstacles throughout his career.
Criticism, financial problems, even getting kicked out of his own company.
But he never gave up.
He used those challenges to make him stronger.
That's what allowed him to achieve those extraordinary things.
But I think there's also a cautionary tale here.
Oh, definitely.
Venter's drive to make progress sometimes came at a cost.
Sometimes he moved too fast.
Right, and he didn't always think about the ethical implications.
His ambition sometimes overshadowed concerns about the risks.
So the third lesson might be about finding that balance between ambition and responsibility. Scientific progress can't happen in isolation.
We have to consider the impact on society.
Think about the unintended consequences.
And remember the ethical consideration.
Venter's story has given us a lot to think about.
It really has.
It's raised questions about what life is, about the limits of science, and the responsibility that comes with these new technologies.
It's been fascinating.
As we wrap up this deep dive,
I'm feeling both excited and a bit apprehensive about the future.
I know what you mean.
We're living in this incredible time of scientific advancement.
And Venter's work shows us what's possible.
But it also reminds us that we need to be careful.
We need to have open discussions about the ethics of all of this.
And we need to make sure that these new tools are used for good.
So to our listeners, we leave you with this thought.
What role do you want to play in this incredible story of scientific discovery and innovation?
How are you going to use your knowledge and your values to help create a future where science benefits everyone?
Because the future isn't something that just happens to us.
We create it together.
Through our choices, our action, and the conversations that we have.
So that's it for our deep dive into the world of J. Craig Venter.
We hope you found it as interesting and thought-provoking as we did.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep trying to make a positive difference in the world.